Welcome back, Clint Fuquay, the health engineer, the Personal Health Care Reform Talk Show. And I have got Betty Murray on with me today. And man, it's been a long time.
It has been a long time. We've known each other for a long time.
Oh, a long time since your first, the first clinic that you put together.
Yeah.
So like I've seen you go from like the little tiny clinic to this big, expansive 6,500 square foot.
Yes. I've had 4 locations that I've remodeled.
yeah, luxurious, beautiful place with artwork and the rooms, and I mean it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal what you put together. I still remember doing grand opening with you and Jeannie Bear at your first place.
That's right. Yes.
And that was
fun because that was actually an art mixer. So we had a grand opening and art mixer at the same time. We've always believed art was a big part of people's expression and the beauty that should be in a medical office. Like it should not be sterile.
Well, it calms everybody down because you got beautiful stuff to look at instead of just a white wall that you're staring at.
Yeah. We don't have a single white wall.
Yeah. Waiting for the doctor to come in and, what's going on? What do I do?
Yes, you're right.
No gowns.
Yeah, we don't have.
Yeah.
We don't have gowns, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, you are like the pinnacle concierge style medicine, essentially.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
And as you can see, it's very, very well educated with
lots of books. A lot of these are my friends' books, my own books, just lots and lots and lots of stuff.
Because you've got how many books now?
I've got 3 books. Yeah, I've got 3 books. I have another book coming out in a matter of weeks called Just Right, which is going to be about, kind of the way to think about hormone replacement therapy in midlife, and that every woman deserves the right to feel just right, especially in these, decades that come after childbearing.
Oh, yeah, because like 50's the new 30.
Yes.
Or actually, technically, I guess 50's like the new 20 now.
With
the way everybody's living at this point, 50's like the new 20.
Yeah, there was an influencer online who was a newscaster, and she goes, well, I don't have to do old, because she's like, I already did old. And she was showing pictures of herself from like the early 90s. And, we had a period of time where, many of us probably didn't express ourselves the same, because a lot of women actually in their 50s today look younger than they probably did in their late 30s, early 40s. I do. And I also feel better, but a lot of it's because of my journey, so it is kind of funny because I'm like, I don't feel 56 going on 57 at all.
Yeah, because you haven't aged a bit.
Yeah.
If anything, you've like...
I've actually reversed a little bit. I was like, I looked older then than I do now.
Yeah, and she's got way more stress on her now too. And all the travel.
Yes, that's
Tons
true.
Of travel.
That's true. Tons of travel.
Lots of travel. In fact, you've probably seen her like online a bunch now because your videos are starting to pop up.
Yes.
All over the place. First time I started seeing them pop up, I'm like,
yeah, I'm a, it's funny because I love to share information. I love being on screen. I love being on, the stages and talking, but the social media thing is just it's an animal that I don't really love being on, but I also recognize that's how you share information. So it's like, okay, I tell my team, I'm like, all right, I'm doing some videos for you. Cool.
Yeah. Well, because you eventually get the person who goes, I don't think you're right about that. You're like, well,
Yeah.
Here's the research.
Yeah. That's okay. It's more so how you can get kind of sucked into the social media.
Oh yeah.
Just even if you're trying to take care of the things that you put out there, it's getting sucked into that vortex because you're being served things that piss you off. The whole reality is they want you on there and they want you agitated. And so I'm like, okay, so I get on there and I respond to things and then I try and make myself jump off because I don't want to get sucked into that black hole.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do that a little bit with my other page for the gym, and like people respond and like I'll hit a little response just to get them going and going and going, mostly because it brings in more people to see our stuff. But yes, you have to like play the game, just hop in and hop out, hop in, hop out.
That's right.
And don't live in it because it's not real. It's all virtual.
Yeah.
But the big thing, the reason why we're here is women, females, hormones they're back on the menu. Okay.
Yes, they are.
I did a show about peptides because peptides are a big deal.
Yeah.
Everybody's starting to get into them. They're talking about them, all the GLP-1s, Retta, and then you got, the Wolverine stack, the BPC, and everything else. Like, what do we do? Is this really good? Is it going to work? Well, it all works, but, you got to know what you're doing with it. That's the gist. Go back, watch the other shows. The biggie, though, I'm just going to say it. Y'all are complex.
Yeah.
Women are
women are complex.
They're very complex. Guys, super easy. What's wrong? Let's bump some testosterone, go lift something heavy, have some meat. Go great. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Do you need something to do in life? Find something to do in life. Go do. Conquer something. Go climb a mountain. Women, y'all are like more nuanced. There's more stuff to deal with. There's, from a hormonal standpoint, we technically have one and we kind of modulate stuff, but y'all have like, it's a cascade. It changes every decade.
Yeah, every decade. Well, it actually changes every day too, and especially until you get to menopause.
There's the whole cycle of everything.
Yeah.
Monthly, daily, it changes throughout the month. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Guys, you all know.
Yeah, we do, and the problem is our medical system is very patriarchal, and I don't mean it to be mean it to be offensive, but the reality is, everything medical school textbooks, medical school training, medical school anatomy is all based on male anatomy.
Yeah.
And women, once they finally were even documented, was about what we call bikini medicines. We were a set of breasts, ovaries, and a uterus, and that was pretty much it. And so women's health has largely been unstudied. If you look at, especially if you remove breast cancer. So if we take out fertility and breast cancer, it's less than 2% of research dollars go to anything for women.
Yep.
Only 1% goes to women after menopause. And every woman, nobody gets a pass on that. There's 50 million women in the United States that are in menopause right now, 6,000 a day. And they're going to spend a third of their life, if not more, in menopause, where we haven't done anything to really support that.
Yep.
We have more studies and more money spent on erectile dysfunction, even in 2023, than we did on menopause.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so
hence all the little blue pills.
Right, and so the reality is our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, and the rest of our other hormones like thyroid and adrenal hormones like cortisol, and even the mineral corticoids like aldosterone, they're a symphony and they all work together. And when they start getting off key, when we get into perimenopause, which on average is 8 years for women, we'll have a lot of symptoms that start to show up. But the other problem is it's never just one thing. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like with a man, it's like, here's your testosterone, good, we got it.
Yeah.
But for a woman, her progesterone might be low, her testosterone might be low, her estrogen is now high relative to that. Her thyroid is now responding to that change, because thyroid and our sex hormones are intimately tied together. Mm-hmm. We know that from fertility research. She's probably burnt the candle at both ends for 30 years or more. Mm-hmm. And so her adrenals are a little bit shot as well, and she's struggling with sleep, and so she can't sleep. And you have this cascade of hormonal imbalances that create a thing called a phenotype, which is a sort of expression of all of these things happening in your body. Mm-hmm. So even if a practitioner who is well-meaning, who let's say is trained a little bit in menopause, which most aren't, only 20% of medical schools actually have any menopausal training, and that includes OB-GYN and endocrinology, both of which should have some kind of understanding.
Well, plus they study dead tissues and they see everything. Everything's a disease in medicine. It's all disease. It's never like the health piece of it.
Right. But so the reality is, even if they're trained to kind of go, okay, I know how to prescribe estrogen, I know how to maybe prescribe progesterone if they have a uterus, because again, that would be like how they look at it, mm-hmm. may or may not be able to prescribe testosterone. Often they don't or won't, because the FDA doesn't have an approved dose for women, because they haven't chosen to look at that. But the reality is there's probably other stuff going on. And so unless you're doing a kind of full body, holistic overview of the entire woman's health system, you're missing the point. So even women, a lot of women may go, okay, I'm thinking about hormone replacement therapy, and maybe they tried it a little bit and they may not feel right in the beginning. And it's often a failure of understanding how to individualize for a woman and recognizing all the other things that are probably going into it. Yeah. I had a terrible experience in my 40s, because I came to functional medicine and nutrition and biochemistry because of an autoimmune diagnosis. And that's where I focused my attention.
And that's when I first met you, is when you were going through all that. And literally, she was her own guinea pig lab rat for a while, figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
First up, because you had all this. I remember all the autoimmune stuff that you were going through, which was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And then, I get to my late 30s and I really go into kind of an early perimenopause, but I had all these, confounding things. I had, thyroid problems. I had adrenal problems. I had my hormones were kind of all over the place, but I was exhibiting what was called estrogen dominant symptoms. And so everybody's like, you got too much estrogen. And truly, honestly, that wasn't really the case. So, and when I turned about 49, I went back to get a PhD and actually earned my doctorate in doing research on how we metabolize hormones. So how your body takes those hormones, uses them, and then takes them to the liver to get rid of. And especially, then I narrowed it down to IBS, because IBS is 3 out of 4 people are going to be females that are diagnosed. And so we have so many complex things because our hormones in a woman affect every single cell. Every single cell, but literally two cells in the body have receptors for estrogen. Yep. And then you've got testosterone receptors everywhere, progesterone receptors everywhere. So it's a full body event. So even when people talk about, oh, we need to train doctors, we do. But every frickin' specialty damn well better know how to take care of a menopausal woman, because the cardiologist sees us, the gastroenterologist sees us, the nephrologist. We get sent to all these specialists, and most of them don't know, pardon me, jack shit about women's health. So they come in and they mess with a situation and apply medications that have never been tested on women, and often may be hormonally related, or at least if you had the hormones taken care of, you may be able to identify the few outlier things that may need to be addressed. And so women are being mistreated. Yep. And it's so very frustrating. And, I think most women out here are in this flux, because we have the Women's Health Initiative for 22 years that told everybody to kill them, which they misrepresented the data. It was absolutely incorrect.
Very much misrepresented. Ooh, man, it's think about the misrepresentation of cholesterol by itself. Take that times about 1 million is how misrepresented it was.
I mean, the reality is we started treating women with estrogen therapy in 1942. We were still at war. Right? In 1942, it was the most prescribed medication behind statin medications in the mid 90s. And if you had gone to your traditional doctor and said, I'm not feeling very well, I'm 52, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, got maybe a hot flash, they would have been like, here you go. No questions asked. They'd have handed out like candy. And the Women's Health Initiative, when they posited that it increased the risk of breast cancer, which wasn't statistically significant and never proved out to be true, and actually what they failed to say was the women that were on Premarin alone, the estrogen alone, had a 23% reduced risk compared to the women who did nothing at all. But they never said that. They took that one arm, the Prempro arm, that had an increase from a 3 in 1,000 to a 4 in 1,000, and they ran with it and, sort of spun the data to scare people. And so when the FDA removed that black box warning this year, finally, but here's the reality, is so many women have been raised in that. The doctors who are treating right now are my contemporaries.
About 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, most of the doctors that are practicing right now are my age. Mm-hmm. And so they were trained that it's deadly, you don't know how to use it, don't use it. Mm-hmm. And so the reality is most women today are experiencing perimenopause and menopause. They're not even sure if that's it, because we don't teach them. The doctors don't know what they're doing. And so they're stuck and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of nervous about doing it.
Oh, yeah, very. Speaking of, I've got a few people that I've talked to about this, and they're like, I hear about this and this and this. And I'm just like, look at everything that we peeled everything back on lately. Okay, yeah. Look at how much everybody's been wrong about in the medical industry, or not just wrong about it, they overtly lied about it to make you do other stuff that was not going to be in your favor. Now think about it in terms of estrogen now, that they just said, hey, black box just came off and here's why, and like, oh, I don't know. We know they've been lying to us for 30, 50, 60, 70 years about stuff, so maybe open your mind a little bit and go find an expert.
Yeah.
It's doing this, and been like digging into this stuff, so you can get good information out of it and basically get the healthcare that you really need, instead of just going back in the factory farm of it. So from that standpoint, like, you've got a place here in Dallas, mm-hmm. and I was going to say, how do they find you? Well, easy, they find you online, because I know you do a lot of, you do online consults? Like what, 90% of your business is
Yeah,
online
I mean, even so I have Living Well Dallas, the clinic. So we are licensed in the state of Texas, and we also have a practitioner license in Arizona. So we're able to see anybody in Texas or Arizona, or if they fly here. We have people that do fly here. And then I have another company called Minerva. So Minerva's the goddess of science, medicine, and war.
You may have seen that online, but at this point, maybe.
Yeah, and that company is exclusively designed around perimenopause and menopause and really supporting women in that age group. And so we have licensed practitioners that are licensed in all 50 states that do a bioidentical hormone replacement therapy with a functional medicine lens. So we've taken my research, our 22 years of experience at the clinic, and basically virtualized it. And so we're able to really get dialed in to personalize and be more proactive and preventative for women. Because people come to functional medicine often because what is traditionally used in conventional medicine doesn't work. So they begin to either look for something new, or they start to lose trust. Yeah. And I tell everybody, I'm the canary. I was the 20% that whenever they said this is this, it didn't work for me. And the reality is for a lot of women, if you had a lot of issues like with your cycles and other things, chances are you need a little more nuanced approach for your hormone replacement therapy. Every woman, I don't care if you're 85 years old, you deserve the right to actually examine hormone replacement for you, because there's reasons why you might do it, even if you're past that kind of ideal window. But a lot of women need that more supportive approach. And so Minerva enables us to do that in all 50 states and actually give access that we wouldn't normally be able to do in a clinic.
Yeah. And this comes down to not just basic health. This is looking at how do you optimize your health to where you can live a better life into your 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s, 110s, 120s, 130s, 150s is the limit.
Well, I was thinking about, you're talking about, someone might say, well, I'm nervous about it, or I'm going to go natural, right? Yeah. So menopause is natural. Living significantly past menopause is unnatural. Our lifespan in 1900 was, a woman's lifespan on average was 48 years. If you took out maternal death, which was what killed most women, right? So you take that out, we lasted until our mid 50s. So if you went through menopause around 52, 55, and you bit the dust at my age at 57, did it really matter? No, you didn't have decades of bone loss, muscle loss, heart problems, vascular disease, dementia, right? And so when I was very arrogant and also very, very caught up in my sort of functional medicine, I'll do everything with nutrition when I first got into this field. I was like, I can raw dog this. I can find the right nutritional supplements. I can find the right herbs. I can tell you right now, there's not an herb on the planet. There's not a maca root, rhodiola, or anything else like that combination that you can buy over the counter that will replace the hormones your ovaries are no longer making. I found that out the hard way. I had to go, okay, damn, I'm going to have to do hormones.
It's not like a guy where you can say, okay, look, we're going to give you some Tribulus and this and this and this and this, and we get your testosterone to produce again, because you still as a guy, you produce testosterone forever.
Yeah, your testes don't change.
Yeah, they're still there. You don't lose them. They don't go away. This is a whole different
game.
And you're like the factory goes, oh, we're done. We're on break. Good luck. Have fun with the rest of your life.
I forgot. How old are you, Clint? Am I allowed to ask? I'm 57, so almost actually, 56 going on 57. So.
I am 49 and a half.
Okay, so the average
50's coming.
Yeah, the average 50-year-old woman who's gone through menopause, 50-something-year-old woman, and has not been put on hormone replacement therapy, has less estrogen in her body than a man of the same age. Yeah. We flatline. We don't just go a little bit lower. We completely flatline.
It's off the cliff.
And that's why we see, loss of bone. That's why we see an absolute risk of Alzheimer's. That is not even in question anymore. The loss of estrogen increased women's risk for Alzheimer's, particularly if you're an ApoE4 carrier, which is the genetics that increase that risk over your lifespan. And we also have vascular damage that happens to everybody. And then if you're like me and I've got a lot of vascular genetics, that's going to accelerate as this goes through.
So if you ought to know this, women actually die from heart attacks more than men do.
more likely to die in the emergency room.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so you see all the commercials. Is the guy having the heart attack? No, no, no. It's the woman having the heart attack, but it feels like a stomach ache.
Yeah, you feel a vague sense of doom, stomach ache, and fatigue.
Yeah.
And you might get sweaty. So I'm like, well, how many of us feel that on a regular basis? Really? I mean, seriously, you don't present the same. And then a lot of times doctors will say, oh, you're a whiny woman. It's anxiety. You just need to go home.
Yeah. You just need a good night of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's a problem. So, so if you look at women, you go, okay, so when is the perfect time, right? We don't have great research for this. We know that the best time, right? So if we say the best time is within 10 years of menopause, and that's because we have an accelerated, so think of aging as it kind of does this. And then when we hit menopause, we have this kind of straight up arc, right? And it's interesting because they say men and women do it, but women's arc is much higher in your 40s. And it's like, oh, I wonder why. It's because our hormones are dropping. And so if we apply hormone replacement therapy in that first 10-year window, so the average age is 51 for a menopause for women, that means somewhere in that like mid 40s all the way to the mid 50s is probably the ideal range, because what it does is halt that aging process. The brain doesn't shrink, it doesn't remap neural pathways, we don't see a powering down of the prefrontal cortex.
Well, it's also from a physical mental standpoint, okay, how the brain functions is different between men and women, mostly because of the whole estrogen thing.
Yeah.
And once the estrogen goes off the map, your brain function just doesn't.
Yeah, it dims.
It dims, like it's because you don't have that interconnection of the estrogen, because if y'all didn't know this, we're more factual based, and you hop over here, it's much more emotional based. That's why mentally your memories are tied to emotions and everything else, and the estrogen response to that, we don't really have that, which is why there's all that back and forth stuff. But when you don't have that estrogen there, you don't get that emotional charge every time for the mental recall.
Yeah.
And so it really changes stuff, and it changes personalities too. I know that the personality change can be massive. And unlike like grumpy old man, you're just grumpier. It's like a major personality change that starts happening through that process.
I mean, there's a lot of, so the early symptoms are rarely ever hot flashes or night sweats. They're near the end. All the research is pointing to neurological things. So like brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, depression, irritability. And it is because we have much more connections across the center part of the brain, and we store language on both sides. And that's why we recover from strokes better than men. But when we lose estrogen, a lot of that goes away. And even some of the cannabinoid system runs on estrogen. And so, and then if we look at the bone loss and then the cardiovascular aging that occurs, all of those things basically increase our risk for chronic disease. So a woman lives an average of 4.5 years longer than a man, but in poorer health.
Yep.
So my mom spent almost 3 years in an assisted living center after a stroke. And I can tell you, I've been in skilled nursing. I've been in the hospital a million times with her in several different nursing environments. And the reality is it's full of women, and then you'll occasionally run into a token male.
Yeah.
And so the truth is hormone replacement therapy not only makes you feel better, improves your mood, libido, muscle strength, all those other things, but it also prevents the onset of those diseases earlier in life. And that's what really gets me going. I do care about your hot flashes. I care about all the other stuff. What I want to do is a nursing home avoidance program. Let's not go there, because we worked too hard to get here.
Yeah. And
the last thing we want to do is lose our independence.
And the more you can avoid that, the better, because they're not all great. Look at my granddad, got into this great place. My granddad was like the new hot guy on the block. And he passed away a couple of years ago, but it was hilarious when he went into that, and like all the women were like, oh, it's the new dude. And my mom's like, no.
Yeah,
it was hilarious, that the whole change of everything. But it is predominantly tons of women. Tons of women there. A couple old guys over here playing cards on the side, and it's
all ladies.
Yeah.
It's all ladies. So that ideal window is mostly to slow down that acceleration of aging that we see.
Yep.
However, if I'm a woman and maybe I'm listening to this and I'm starting to pick up information and I'm starting to read, we do already have data. There was a 10 million woman study that was published and paid for by Medicare, but published in the Menopause Society Journal in late 2024, that basically retrospectively looked back at 10 million women's records in EMR records and examined what they were diagnosed with, what happened over those 20 years, and what did they die from, and whether they did hormone replacement therapy. Did they do it for a period of time? Right? Because that means some of them were like, I'm doing functional, so I'm doing it anyway. Like our people, we've always been doing hormones. Right. And then, did they start and never stop? Because there was a bunch of women that did that. And then there was some that never did it at all. And it was also a big enough study to really look at different delivery mechanisms, topical compared to oral, which we would never use anymore. And then what happened? And when we looked at the all-cause mortality, so hormone replacement therapy in the groups that did hormones, whether they did it for a short period of time, but especially if they did it and continued it, all causes of dying was reduced compared to the women who did nothing at all. Yep. And we're talking colon cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer by 13%, heart attack, stroke, CHF, everything. And so the reality is as a woman, we're going to live longer and have reduced mortality with hormone replacement therapy. And we have lots of other studies that have come in from other countries like that. And even if you're like 65, 70, some of the big risk factors that women have, like osteoporosis. So 50% of women 65 and above that fall and break a bone, 50% of them will not survive that first year because of complications. Yeah. And of the ones that do, 50% will never have their mobility that they had before. That's scary.
Yeah. Especially if it was the whole fall and break your hip thing.
Yeah.
There's two ways that happens, okay? There's either you lose your balance, you fall, and you break the hip. Or the other one that happens a lot is the hip breaks.
Yeah.
And then you fall.
Yeah.
And that's when you your bones are
brittle.
They're gone. They're dust at that point. And you take a wrong step and snap. And that one is you're done at that point.
Well, and a lot of the times it's not really the fall or even the repair, it's the infections that happen afterwards. Yeah. And so the reality is even if you're 65, 70, we have studies looking at even low dose topical estrogens, particularly the patch, because we had studies that looked at this in postmenopausal women, and osteoporosis is the strongest indication where we've actually done that research, because the reality is we have a gap in the research. But any woman, if that's I think of aging because, again, I've got cardiovascular risk. That's probably my biggest risk. I'm an ApoE4 carrier, so I then take the dementia, Alzheimer's thing. And then I've got osteoporosis there, but I've lifted weights my entire life. And so that's kind of lower on the list.
She's jacked.
And so the reality is, you got to look at what your risk factors are, and then it's kind of like doing some accounting. You're like, which one has a higher likelihood? And then you start choosing your lifestyle pieces around that, And the truth is, if osteoporosis is a risk for every woman, because losing estrogen loses the ability to keep your bones from reabsorbing and building at the same speed. All women are losing bone if they're not working on it. And so if that one's really high for me, that's going to ratchet up hormone replacement. I don't care if you're 80, right? It may not be fast enough to rebuild if you've lost a lot, but it can absolutely be part of that picture.
It can help it rebuild a lot faster, and then you start working out. Even faster.
Yeah. I mean, the FDA approved estrogen therapy in the form of Premarin in 1988 for the treatment of osteopenia and the reduction of bone loss in women. So it's not like we don't have the data. Yes, maybe we don't get all the cardiovascular risk, but we also know that the topical forms of estrogen, so no oral. So if you're my age or older, do not use oral estrogen. But if you're using topical forms, a patch, a cream, an oil, even an injectable, a pellet, any of those that absorb first into the body, they do not carry the clotting and cardiovascular risk that oral estrogens have. We have lots of studies that have come out in the last couple of years that absolutely negate that. And that's a lot what doctors will say, you can't have it because you're old and therefore you're going to have a heart attack or stroke. Yeah. It's not true. Yeah, if they try and give you Premarin, that's a risk you don't want to take.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing with that is, so estrogen in the system, it's looking at bones. It doesn't help you grow bone. It reduces how fast it goes away, which is a biggie, because you have a rate of bone loss every year as you get older. If you can slow that down, perfect. You start working out, now you can halt it and you start growing it. But without that little boost to keep it from going down, and you start having high cortisol issues, which a lot of people have, cortisol just eats it. Just eats through it. That and all your muscles. So all your hip muscle goes away, your bone goes away, break a hip, done. Otherwise, a little bit of estrogen, some weights, and you get that to not go away and better sleep, cortisol. And then you can rebuild and you can go live a healthy life and have some fun for the next 30 years.
Yeah. There's some emerging research that's come out in the last year looking at progesterone, particularly the cycling of progesterone. Most of it was done in premenopausal women, but progesterone also stimulates osteoblast activity. So it actually stimulates the building of bone.
Yeah.
So, and testosterone converts to estrogen inside the bone. So the reality is all of these sex hormones affect every part of the body, and we have to quit acting like it doesn't.
Because it's all related. It's all connected. It's a big body. It's a living body, unlike the dead bodies that they study in med school, because they just look at a cadaver and look at it. It's not coming back to life. I know I've done cadaver labs. Okay, they're not lively at all. It's a lively class. It's fun. Bad humor.
Yes.
So for the women out there, let's look at like starting point. At what point should they start looking at this, considering, contemplating? Okay, when do I start looking at my hormones?
Yeah.
And looking at
like optimal.
Yeah. How do I start optimizing my hormones? How do I look at them to make sure that they're staying where they need to be, and they are where they need to be, right? Relative to everything, and before they just fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what do they start looking for? Like if they want to do, say they don't want to come to you yet, they're not ready for that. They just want to do like some basic home testing,
something like that, just to see.
Just to have some baseline of, I've got some knowledge for myself. This way, when I walk in there, I kind of know what's going on with me before I even sit down. So if I walk into somebody and they're just putting a lot of BS out there, I know, look at my stuff. I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to call Betty.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So if you've already in menopause, the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah.
Right? Because the advantage is always earlier, but it's also a long game. So it's not like if you go 2 weeks because you're gathering information, like you're not losing anything, but you don't want to go 2 or 3 more years, right? Because the acceleration of aging happens before the period stops. So here's some things that you have to understand. The symptoms that we often look for are the end symptoms, not the beginning symptoms. And you could still have a period and actually be low on estrogen. That was something that, and it depends on, so when you get into the chaos zone where estrogen, it bungee jumps, it's all over the place.
Female athletes.
Female athletes need to look a lot earlier because we often are low in body composition and body fat, which means it's going to suppress ovarian function, so you probably need it earlier. But the reality is even if your hormones are kind of bouncing around and you get a 300 on an estradiol on a lab test and maybe you get a 30 the next day, the reality is as you're starting to see those symptoms, you need to be assessed if you want to get the best outcome, because the acceleration of aging happens 3 to 4 years before the end. The problem is we don't have an exact way to tell the end. And that is emerging research in the last couple of years. There's a preclinical study, a very large one, looking at trying to figure out where that date line is. But again, that's individual. I went into menopause by 49. Somebody else might be 46. Another person, I have a woman that just ended at 58. She was like, Betty, when will this end? I'm like, I don't know. We're just waiting for the last egg to fly out of the ovary, right? So the reality is you want to start. So if you're listening and you're like, I think I'm kind of in perimenopause, maybe I can't sleep very well, I'm fatigued, my brain isn't working. This is your wake up call to consider and start looking at it and assessing it. If you're already in menopause, get educated and decide. And so when you start, it may not be doing all the hormones at once. It might be progesterone only, because that's the first one to decline. It might be progesterone and testosterone, physiologic but not super physiologic dosing, because in women, if you get too high, you will pack on weight. I won't go through the mechanics because it'll keep us here about 3 or 4 hours, because the biochemistry mechanics are pretty intense. And then most women need to probably start estrogen long before their period stops. Right? And because what that does is stabilize it behind the scenes, unless you're having like crime scene periods and they're heavy and you got fibroids, those are signs that you had more estrogen to begin with. And that's why you need somebody that's educated, that's not just going to throw pills at you or drugs at you. But if you're in menopause, for sure, if you've hit that and nothing's really happening, you can still go on hormones. And the true practitioner today, always pretty much starts kind of at a relatively low dose, because we don't know. We have no idea. We didn't test you at 25 to say when you were perfect. What did it look like?
If it was.
Perfect. Yeah, I was never perfect. But the reality is we always start low because you have variability in how you absorb it, what delivery mechanism works for you, how you metabolize it. And so you start and you look at symptoms and then you look at labs. So if your doctor or prescribing practitioner isn't looking at labs, checking symptoms, and then also I would say looking at how you metabolize it, so a urine test to see how it moves out of the body, you may not have the full picture. Because the studies that have been done looking at dosing, mostly Louise Newsom out of the UK, because UK has kind of a standardized, they're like, this is the dose you get. Yeah. Right. And so what they found was 50% of her patients that were on hormone replacement therapy on the standardized dose in the UK system, 50% were underdosed to get the brain, the heart, the bone improvements. 25% were overdosed on the same dose. And so you have to have that sort of individualization. But what we're looking for is that you feel great and your labs match. What the research says are those protective areas in the current data that we know we're protecting things, right? And when you have those two, often somebody feels great, and then it's sort of maintaining that, because you'll have sort of shifts, like where I was at 49.50 and where I am today, I've had to shift what I'm doing just because other things come up, right? You know, your body is changing. And I would say they got to look at thyroid and all those other hormones, because you can't look at one and move that lever.
It's all connected, especially the thyroid and adrenal complex stuff. Yeah. That whole HPA axis, along with all this, is, oh man, we'd be here for like an next.
Yeah.
Do you have a month? Do you have a month for us to keep doing this? So, but for everybody out there, if you've ever watched Thelma and Louise, you know, they get in the car and they go off the cliff. At that point, you're talking to your buddy, you're thinking about getting in that car. That's when you start doing all this testing stuff, way before you start going off the cliff, because that's when your hormones go off the cliff and everything is just downhill from there. Yeah. Not in a good way. I wanted to throw Thelma and Louise out there. That popped in my head. I had to. It's there.
Yeah, a lot of times what we feel is like, I just don't feel like myself. Like that's one of the first things. I don't feel like myself. I'm like, okay, that's probably the start.
When you find that Brad Pitt and think, maybe I should do something wild and crazy, maybe time to start looking at stuff. Maybe, or have a little bread and then go look at stuff. Anyway, before we end this, I did want to get into the PCOS thing,
PMOS,
because it is now PMOS. So so PCOS. She's like, no, it's PMOS. Get the term right. It's changed. So let's give everybody a little tidbit about that, because that's a biggie that literally
1 in 8 women.
That was a hammer that literally dropped.
Yeah, it's 1 in 8 women. So PCOS was the original diagnosis, but it has been renamed appropriately to what's really happening, which is PMOS, which stands for polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. So essentially what it is a predisposition. Some of it is genetic, and it has kind of 3 different buckets it falls into, where the sex hormones, particularly as you come into maturation, have a very strong interconnected activity to the insulin, blood sugar, even your mineralocorticoids relationship, and it's kind of an inherited insulin resistance that has this relationship with your ovaries. And before polycystic ovarian syndrome, the only way a woman would get diagnosed is if she wasn't having periods or they were really irregular, and they went and looked on a sonogram and saw cysts on the ovary, which aren't even required for actual diagnosis. But essentially what happens is you get basically an insulin resistance, an inflammatory response that affects sometimes fertility, but it affects every part of the body. And so most women will experience things like hirsutism, so they might have more androgens, which are your testosterone and androstenedione, DHT. Doesn't always require testosterone to be high. You can have normal testosterone and the other androgens are playing.
Because the conversions.
Right. And so it's hallmarked by insulin resistance, usually an androgen excess, but you have to look at all of them, and a lower level of progesterone and a higher level of the hormone, luteinizing hormone, which basically signals ovulation. And estrogen is often a little bit dominant as well. What's hard is, young women don't get found unless they fit that sort of infertility thing, but it causes significant weight gain and weight loss resistance. And you can do all the right damn things and it won't come off. And you can have, some women will be PMOS and they're the thin phenotype, which is very, very rare. Usually it's on the other side. Like I was definitely a PMOS because I was like, dude, I hit puberty and I exploded in all directions. I went from nothing to a D cup to like a big butt, and I was like, what just happened? Because I was underweight. I was tiny for my age. I was like.
Yeah. She went full Kardashian without surgery.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Except I think I'm a little more busty, even on natural. But I remember being like, I can only eat lettuce and chicken, and I need to burn about 800 calories a day to try and maintain it. Because I was in the bodybuilding community, like when I met all the guys at PhysioFit and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But I was starved myself, and I would talk to everybody, but all I had to do was like, if one thing sort of fell off that thing, I'd pack on weight. I could pack on 5-10 pounds in like a week and a half, and so for a lot of women, we went through that in our 20s and 30s, and we're hypoglycemic and all of that. But when you get in your 40s and 50s and your sex hormones start to change, it makes it very hard to find it. Because everything's on the way down, everything's sort of mixed. So for a lot of women, 1 in 8 women have this metabolic disorder that plays with your sex hormones. But even when you go through menopause, the ability to find it becomes harder, but the metabolic problem is still there. And what's interesting is they benefit the most from getting hormone replacement therapy that is very, very balanced. And they also benefit from GLPs, metformin, berberine, alpha lipoic acid, all of these things that help insulin sensitivity, along with exercise and movement. But if you have a well-meaning clinician that's like, hey, I'm just going to put testosterone in your butt because you don't have a libido, because you probably don't, you will gain weight.
What?
Yeah, I did. I gained 10 pounds, and they were like, no, it's just water weight. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of water. But my test was low on labs. My test was low on labs, and and it took a little bit. Like I was like, okay, I need to do some more testing, and I was like, okay, my androgens are high, but the reality is so many women struggle with their weight, and they have for their entire life, with or without infertility issues, and then they get here, and then the amplification of the loss of estrogen just makes it worse. And so you have to have somebody that understands, and like I said, it can be adrenal driven, right, where the adrenals and the ovaries produce androgens, right? And it can come from either one. And it can be inflammatory driven, and it can be very, very insulin driven. And usually it's a combination of those, but you have to sort of pull it apart. And so the renaming to PMOS finally got the right label, so people could actually get diagnosed appropriately. Now we just need, again, clinicians to learn how to treat it, which is like, okay, we got a massive overhaul, both in menopause and PMOS.
It's also, it's also kind of being looked at like diabetes 4.
Yeah, it's a type of it's your risk for diabetes and chronic disease is higher than the average person.
You get the type 1, type 2, type 3, which is
brain
up your brain, and so they're looking at that as like diabetes 4 now, which they start doing that, and we got drugs for that now.
But some of those drugs, like your GLPs, GIPs, all of those, they aren't necessarily panacea. So what I have often seen through our clinical work, I don't see patients anymore, but the other individuals in our clinic and online, is often they may have done a GLP or GIP, but they haven't been put on hormones yet, or they haven't been balanced quite right.
They got
halfway there,
half of it,
and it's a lot of times because we're not looking at fasting insulin, we're not looking at A1C, we're not looking even at some of those inflammatory markers, or sometimes even serum-free fatty acids. We have to dig a little deeper to understand what's going on. But I have a lot of heart there, because even within the functional community, people are like, no, Betty, it's just your adrenals, and then your thyroid. I'm like, I've taken a lot of thyroid meds, nothing moved. And it wasn't really until I was able to kind of go through menopause, figure out the metabolic distress, and then also get my hormones sort of balanced behind the scenes. And I was like, it was easier for me to lose weight. I can maintain my weight without cutting carbs and all that stuff. And so I feel for anybody that's in that place, because I know what it's like. It felt like an uphill battle my entire life.
Like I said, she's her own guinea pig. She's like, you've been through all of it.
I guinea pig for everybody else. I do the labs and check it and tell people, like, this is what happens. This is what happens. And and the truth is I look at the research so people don't have to. Like, I'm a PhD, not an MD, so I don't diagnose nor treat, but I have those that work with me that do. But my job is to understand the complexity of the research, so they do.
The staff here. Man.
No, we have some amazing. My people are so amazing.
Because I've known a lot of your staff for a long time.
Oh yeah, most everybody that's been here. Like, I think we have Bryce, who's the newest, who's like at 3 years. And that's because one of ours left because of having children. But most everybody here is 8 years or more. Right. And we have all the way to Ty, which is 17 almost.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 17 going on 18. Yeah.
So, man, Was that a good show? That was a lot. Replay this. Replay, because that was a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah.
We shoved a lot in. All the books. Do you see all the books? So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
That was awesome. I've been wanting to do this, man, for a long time.
Yes.
Like 3 shows. I've had 3 different shows, and now I finally get her in here.
Yeah. Well, you and I went back and forth last year, and I spent 120 days on the road last year. So
she travels a lot. You're probably going to see her in different cities all over the place. That's why she does virtual.
Yeah.
For everybody out there, let's give everybody how they get in contact with you here for the virtual program, stuff like that, and then kind of how that whole thing functions.
Yeah. So first, I have a podcast called Menopause Mastery on all podcast platforms once a week, and I go in depth. Right. So if you're a nerd and you like this stuff, that's the podcast for you, because I go into the science, the research, so you can understand it, but I try and make it very, very accessible. So it's also,
we covered this much of it.
Yeah, just easy language, but I also make sure you understand where the research is coming from. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Betty Murray or Facebook. And then obviously my website is drbettymurray.com. So the clinic in Dallas, if you happen to be in Dallas, it's livingwelldallas.com, super easy. And then my telemedicine company, the easiest way to get to that is gethormonesnow.com. The company's name is Minerva, but that's harder to spell, so it's gethormonesnow.com. And like I said, we work in all 50 states. We have a couple different programs, and thank you for having me.
Yep, that was awesome.
Yeah,
that was awesome. Thank you for joining me. Come back next. I don't even know who I have next time, but show up for the next show. Thanks for being here. Take care of your health, because that's all you got.